Hi everyone and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is NURFATEHAH binti ABDUL and my matric number is 273652. So today I will present the table of entities and activities. The first one is purchase table of entities, and the entities is store executive, which is Encik Selamat. The activities are reviews the inventory card and list all product for reordering purpose, decide on the purchase list, open the minimum inventory needed, refers to the vendor's file for identifying the vendors to deliver the order inventory, prepare a pre-numbered purchase order. Purchase order forms are then filled in incoming purchase order file by date. And last, take out the respective purchase order copies from the incoming purchase order files. And the second one of the entities is operation employees. They reviews the completed delivery file for all completed purchase orders, handles the receiving process, inspect the inventory received for possible damage, verifies the inventory description and stated the quantity on the vendor's delivery notes, update the quantity received, and last one, forward the original copies of the purchase orders to accounts unit. And the third one is vendors. Vendors fulfills the order and delivers the order inventory to SSP's receiving docs. And the last one is receiving docs. Receive and store order inventories, verify the quantity received as per delivery note without physically inspecting, sign the designated section for receiving information in the purchase order form specifies. Next is cash disbursement table of entities. There are only two entities in this cash disbursement table, which are account officer and computer programs. First of all is account officer, which is Lisa. The activities is take out the respective purchase order copy that matches the vendor's invoice, get into SESP's accounting system and record the vendor's invoice by keying the reseller's ID, record the vendor's invoice, take out the invoice with the attached purchase order copy and enter the vendor's detail into the SESP's accounting system, print a payment voucher, forward the payment voucher for payment processing, record the transaction into a cash disbursement files and create a payment voucher register files, and produce a report from SESP's accounting system comprising of purchase summary, account payable summary, and total cash disbursement of the month. The second one is computer program. Computer program record the transaction into the purchase file and update the respective vendors files and subsequently the general ledger master file. Then, it retrieves the respective vendors record from the vendors master file and display all pending invoice on the screen. And the last one is update the vendors master file and general ledger master file for all transactions entered. Next is context diagram for purchase. Context diagram is important to identify the flow of the information system and the external entities. In the context diagrams, there are three external entities, which are vendors, receiving docs, and accounts units. The vendors receive purchase order from the purchase order system and fulfill the orders. And then, the vendors deliver the inventories to the receiving docs. The receiving docs receive the inventories and unload the inventories. And then, it forward the original copies of purchase order to accounts units. Apart from that, there is also context diagram for cash disbursement. In this context diagram, there are also external entities, which are vendors, account managers, and general managers. The vendors receive payment slip from cash disbursement and receive payment of purchase inventory from account managers. The account managers receive payment voucher from cash disbursement system and forward the report to the general manager.
Assalamualaikum and hi to Madam Raudah. My name is FIFI AIRINA SYAZWINA. My metric number is 273668. So in this video, I will present about the logical data flow diagram for purchase order system, logical data flow diagram for cash disbursement, and also the strength of internal control procedures for SESB. Firstly, I will proceed with the logical data flow diagram for purchase order. So in this purchase order system, the person that in charge from SESB is Selamat, is the executive. So the first process that he do is control inventory to be purchased, where he will refer to the vendor's file for the inventory details, and then he will make a requisition for the inventory. So that this is where we come to the second process, which is preparing the purchase order. In this process, Selamat will notify the vendors about the inventory details, and then he will file the purchase order in the incoming purchase order files. And the third process is receiving inventory. In this process, the vendors will start to deliver the inventory to the receiving dock, and then Selamat will takes out the purchase order from the incoming purchase order file, and then when everything has been settled, he will keep the purchase order copies with the vendor's delivery in the completed delivery files. And lastly, when everything has been verified and inventory has been okay, then inventory is updated. Next, I'll proceed the presentation with the logical data flow diagram for cash disbursement system. So in this system, the person that in charge is Lisa. So the first process is verifying the payable. So in this process, firstly, she will file the purchase order when she receives the purchase order into the vendor's invoice file, and next she will record the vendor's invoice details in the vendor's invoice files as well. And lastly, she will choose the invoice for payment. In providing cash disbursement process, firstly, Lisa will record the transaction to the cash disbursement file, and next she will process the voucher payment and file it to the payment voucher register file. Then she will update the account payable records, and the payment details is update and file it to the paid invoice file, and lastly, she will update the details to the general ledger master file as well. The second last process is updating account payable record. So in this process, Lisa will update the account payable and post it to the general ledger. So after post it to the general ledger, she will update the purchase file and the vendor's master file, and then after everything has been recorded and been updated, then she will forward the report to the general manager of SESB.
Today I will explain the flow chart of purchase. The store executive review the inventory cards and list all the products for reordering purpose. And then store executive decide on the purchase based upon the minimum inventories needed for each product together with the minimum order quantity to determine the ordered quantity. And then they will refer to the vendor's file for identifying the vendors to deliver the order inventories. Store executive also prepared 2 copies of pre-numbers purchase order, and the purchase order form are then filled in incoming purchase order file by date while waiting for the delivery. And store executive will take out the respective purchase order copies from the incoming purchase order file. The store executive will also review the completed delivery file for all the completed purchase order. The vendor will fulfill the order and deliver the order inventories to SESB receiving docks and receive and store order inventories. The receiving dock will verify the quantity received as per delivery note without physically inspecting and counting the number of inventories arrived, and will assign the designated section for receiving information in the purchase order form and specifies the receiving date in the purchase order copy. Operation employees will handle the receiving process, and when the delivery employees will inspect and verify the inventories received and will sign the purchase order form in the purchase order form for 2 copies, and they will keep the purchase order form in the completed delivery file and forward the original copy of the purchase order to the account unit.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is SHAFIKA HUSNA with AMRI. Okay, next, flowchart cash disbursement. There are three internal entities, which is account officer, computer program, and account manager. For account officer, from vendor, it take out the invoice and then he reconcile it into vendor's invoice keying with the reseller's ID, and then it goes to vendor's master file. Okay, from he also did purchase order according to the incoming vendor's invoice and reconcile the purchase order to in vendor's invoice keying the reseller's ID. And then every Monday, account officer will check the invoice payment file, such as invoice and purchase order, and then enter the invoice and purchase order into account system in the vendor's master file. Then at the end of the month, he will produce a report such as purchase summary, account payable summary, total cash disbursement, and give it to the general manager. He also will print payment voucher from the updated vendor's master file and general ledger master file and attach it to the purchase order, vendor's invoice, payment voucher, payment slip, and accordingly to paid invoice. And then the print payment voucher will be payment voucher that will submit to the account manager. Is computer program vendor's master file that we key in by the account officer, vendor's invoice into the vendor's master file. From vendor's master file, it will collect all the vendor's detail and record invoice detail onto the system, and then the system will edit and check invoice detail and sort it in vendor's file and purchase file. And from edit and check invoice details, the computer program will print account payable summary and file it into account payable summary, purchase order, and invoice, and also account payable summary. From the filing account payable summary, purchase order, and invoice, it will sort it out in open invoice file, and invoice, purchase order, and account payable summary all into the open invoice file. And in vendor's master file that from the account officer enter into the account system just now, vendor's master file, it will collect all the pending invoice and record the transaction into the cash disbursement file, and then they record the payment voucher register file accordingly and upload it into the update vendor's master file and general ledger master file for the print payment voucher did by account officer. And then lastly, account manager will collect all the payment voucher from the account officer and then make payment through online banking to the vendor, and the account manager also did the payment slip to the vendor. That's all.
Lastly, I'll present about the strength of internal control procedures for SASB. So the first strength is physical control. So this can be seen when the storeroom area is securely locked and only accessible by the authorized employees. So by doing this, SASB can avoid any theft from the outsiders or maybe the fraud from the employees itself. Second, we have the managing of the accounting records using the accounting software. By using the accounting software, SASB can make the recording more accurate and can reduce errors. And other than that, it can also make the recording more faster rather than use the traditional way. Lastly, the strength of internal control procedures for SCSB is the segregation of duties. This can be seen when each duties are handled by different person. So by doing the segregation of duties, SCSB can avoid any missing of tasks, any overlooked job, or anything that can arise in a company because only one person handle most of the jobs. Okay, so by doing the segregation of duties, this can avoid that such a problem in a company. So in conclusion, the strength of internal control procedures for SCSB are good to be practiced by others company. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, next is 4 possible weaknesses in SASB procedures. Provide an appropriate argument to support. Okay, there are possible weaknesses in Sulaiman Amal Sendirian Berhad, sales order and cash receipt procedure. First, Azlina as a sales officer, she cannot simply approve the order. She needs to get an approval from financial approving authorities. This because financial approving authorities are required to authorize and approve a financial transaction before it is committed to avoid the mistake. Okay, secondly, the sale officer review and approve the sale order without check the inventory ability from the store before accepting the sales order, and there any stock out or track. This might lead to the insufficient of inventories if the product is not available, which will make the company owe them if we cannot deliver the inventories to the vendor, to the customer after they already make payment. Okay, thirdly, there is no one to supervise the operation employees' action when they pick up the goods from the store shelf. The inventories might get stolen by the operation employees if there is no precaution being taken. This will cause loss to the company. Okay, the last weaknesses in SSB procedure is the account officer did not ask for approval before she key in the details of payment receipt and just printing it. This lack of supervision will lead to the risk of inaccurate information since there is no one that will check the details key in is correct or not before she reported it. Before she reported the sales invoice as paid. If all transactions of the cash collection will be managed by one account officer, hence there is a risk of information invalidity will occur since there is no supervision done. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
From the weaknesses in the FEFP procedures, we found that there are many risk exposures that might have occurred from each of the internal control. Firstly, the risk of the recording inaccurate information and risk of unauthorized access to accounting records and reports. This happens when Azlina did not get an approval from financial approving authority that might be result wrong transactions. The second risk exposure is risk of information validity, such as wrong information related to inventories. This is because the sales officer approved the sales order without check the inventory availability in the storeroom. Next is there is a risk of misappropriation of inventory and inaccurately recording transaction in records. This is happen when the operation employees handle the goods from the store shelf without the Mr. Slamat monitoring. And last but not least is there will be the risk misappropriation of information might be happen where there could be some errors in the sales order details without the knowledge of the supervisors. This is because when the sales officer did not ask for approval before she key in the details of payment received and then she print it without the permission of the approvals.
Next, I will explain about the appropriate internal control procedure to rectify each of the weaknesses identified in C. The first appropriate internal control procedure to rectify the weaknesses of sales order and the cash receipt procedure is by having an approval authority requirement. This is where the required and experts and specific managers or a person to in charge or authorize each type of the transactions or certain level of transactions to analyze and also approve the transactions. Where when we refer to the first witnesses where Azlina cannot simply approve the order because she needs to get approval from the financial approving authorities. This is because the approval from financial authorities is based on the certain requirements, which Azlina doesn't have that requirement. Next, the sales officer should also make a physical audit of the asset before they approve any of the order sales that made by the customer. So this is because we want to avoid insufficient of inventories, cash and many more. By having a hand counting it also helps us to prevent or reveal any hidden inconsistencies or dissimilarities in account balance in the electronic records. Because when we use the hand counting inventories, it will be more specific. So hand counting inventory should be done periodically. Thirdly, is by having the separation of duties, which when we refer to the third witnesses, which is there is no one supervise the operation employees action when the employees pick up the goods from the shelf. So from this, we can see that the company is lack of separation of duties. So as we know, separation of duties is really important, no matter small in a small business or in a big businesses. So separation of duties it involves the division of tasks, responsibilities to each of the employees. But it also help us or the company to prevent any issues among the employees, also undesirable occasions. Last but not least, standardized financial documentation is also a need to maintain the consistency in keeping the company records. So, as referred in the last witnesses, where the account officer they key in the details without any approval, where it will increase the invalidity of the information. So the company should standardize their financial document so that there is any employees when there is any employees want to key in any data or any informations, they will just need to key in the data only by following the requirement or the standardized financial document. So there will be a format and they just need to key in the certain data that been asked. And then when we use the standard format, it also help the employees to ease their works. Also helps to ease the employees to review their previous record.
Assalamualaikum, my name is WAHIDA binti NASIR, matric number 273655. I will present case study for part 2. Nowadays, COVID-19 pandemic making the whole chaos facing an economic downturn. In the meantime, our country also been affected by an increasing in cybercrime during the Movement Control Order MCO about 90% due to the changing people lifestyle. Cybercrime is an illegal computer-mediated activity that can be conducted through the electronic network. These include fraud, spyware, malware, and also more. So here is the recommendation for Malaysia Communication and Multimedia Commission Cybersecurity Malaysia to prevent an increasing in cybercrime in our country. Firstly, enforce strict law. Although there is a law to penalize people for cybercrime such as Computer Crime Act 1997, but MCMC needs to recheck and restructure the laws to prevent its lacking because people nowadays are fearless to commit the cybercrime. Law enforcement should be based on the solid, reliable, and based on our current situation. Next, expertise and capabilities in preventing and investigating cybercrime should be expanded as well. MCMC needs more expert staff and IT staff especially. How? They need to provide special training for their staff in order to increase their expertise and efficiency in works. In order to prevent those hackers and cybercrime, government needs to be more skillful and more reliable than them. Furthermore, establish a business cybersecurity team. This is a government-free initiative organization to give a guidance to the startup business in joining the business technology cybersecurity. Mostly, startup business can easily become a target of cybercrime because of lacking in management security. So, there needs more assistance and guidance in order to prevent the cybercrime in business. Moreover, establish a special task team. This team is to investigate, monitoring, and especially for cybercrime activities for both local and related to the international. This team can collaborate with private sector or international cybersecurity in order to increase their efficiency and to raise funds. This team will speed up the process to solve the cybercrime case with more transparency. Lastly, the issue of alerts regarding the cyber threats or cybercrime should be expanded as well. In order to increase the awareness to the people that lack of knowledge about the cybercrime, the government can use more platforms to spread the information about cybercrime. But this platform must be more efficient and more active so people can get the cybercrime information easily or also can report the cybercrime case. So as conclusion, cybercrime is a serious crime in our country. It can disturb the country's harmonization if the government did not take the effective prevention to prevent the cybercrime. Thank you.